cloud because that's made it a lot easier to upload things. So the main things, I kind of laid it out based on different aspects of the guild and things we're kind of working towards. And so the first thing is Instagram. We are officially a business Instagram now, so that's exciting. I've been kind of taking a look at the analytics and seeing what kinds of posts are doing well. The takeover seems to have gone well, but that's all I'll say about that. And then we've also got, so our design team, and also Tuan specifically, because Tuan was already kind of doing this in the capacity of their her role as an Instagram member. But the designs are kind of really gaining traction. We've got more of them available. We also decided, and this is just like some little nugget to keep in your mind, but I talked to Tuan last week and we decided to only work in Photoshop because it's so much easier to create templates there where you can just plug images in. So we will be making more and more Photoshop documents, because before I was working in XD, which is really fast to make things, but it's really like the least compatible software out of everything. So especially with like actually editing across platforms and plugging things into a template. So we'll be doing that. And then I think the more regular posting is really helping as well. But I think other than that, the Instagram story, I think, is something that is hard for me to stay on top of. And so a couple of people have helped with that as well. I'm hoping that we'll have at least like 1 to 2 posts per day on that. And it can even just be, I did promote something that Annie and Eliana were doing, the cooking. I don't remember the official name, but I promoted that because they're both volunteer members. And so we know that they both have like a commitment to the group. But I don't know how we feel about doing more promotions for people who are like on the mailing list or anything like that. And I know Joe Lupo sent us a message that I wasn't sure if it was specifically to Olivia or if it was just to us as a whole, because he didn't write anything else. He just sent the message. And it looked like it was a promotion for something. And so I didn't know how to respond to that. So we might want to kind of talk about that aspect as well. So what do you all think about that?
I really like the idea of promoting things that our volunteers are doing. I don't think it will hurt us like at all. If anything, it'll help us a lot to just show that we're like being as supportive as we can. And we tend to, like I help run another Instagram for another organization, and we like go out of our way to find out what people are doing who have like shown at the gallery. We go out of our way to like see what shows they have, and then we like, you know, post it on our platform because we have like a couple thousand followers, and it helps get the word out. And I think it not only is it it's like establishing a community, like a culture that's community focused, you know, but I think it also just like helps us feel like a little bit closer to these folks, you know, and helps them get involved in a different way, and it makes them feel like they're being seen. So I think it's important. I think we should do it if we can.
Also, after the takeover, I got booted from Instagram, our Instagram, so I didn't see what the message from Joe was. So if someone could like type it in the chat or just like say it. It doesn't have to be right now, but if we could just circle back to it.
I just looked at it, yeah, and I was gonna say, I think it was just a lecture that happened yesterday.
Oh, okay.
And we should get you back on the Instagram if you're not already. Did you get back on?
The problem is I was already running Instagram for our school's grad program, and then for our print club, and then I have 3 of my own. So Instagram was like, you have too many, even though previously it said you could have 6. So every like I logged into RIPG and it was like, oh, the password was changed, you have to re-log in. So when I went to do that, it was like, you have too many accounts. So I'm working on shedding the other ones that aren't serving me anymore so I can get this one back. But just in the time being, I'm not seeing, and I know I can like log in on the computer, but that's only when I'm in front of my computer. So I'll just be missing some things.
I think there was a recent update that's been like, has a lot of bugs because it keeps removing people from my like close friends list who've been on it since like that existed. So I don't know. I think it's just I think they have a lot of bugs or something in the programming, so it would make sense that that's being not the same as it used to be.
Has our password?
Yeah, I'll keep you guys.
It's back to the original password on Instagram.
So it actually is kind of back to the original password, except I had to leave off an exclamation point at the end because I realized, well, I didn't realize, it was clear to me that you can't change a password back to something it had already been. So we'll have to kind of talk about like what should we do for that in the future takeovers and things like that. But right now it's the same password, but with no exclamation point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does that mean that we can, you know, the password that we established for takeovers, we can't use that password ever again either. So that's kind of a bummer. I like consistency, you know, and things that make sense. And that's kind of a bummer that we can't do that.
Can we just do like a number for the takeover? Just add like 1, 2.
Mhm.
I do this with my work passwords all the time.
That makes sense.
That's a good idea.
And I completely support. I wanted to circle back to. Oh, sorry, Olivia. Did you want to go?
Oh no, what I was going to say, it's fine. You go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to circle back to the Instagram subject because there's now a new. I don't know if y'all saw this, but part of that big update that probably is causing the bugs is the new guides feature that has been introduced. Guides are like a new. I actually like just learned about this last night. But guides are a new kind of like profile feature similar to like Instagram TV and Reels and whatnot. And basically it's like a compilation of posts either, and it has to be a post. It can either be your saved post, you know, so other people's posts or your posts specifically. And basically you can compile like a guide for a specific topic with, you know, captions. And so it's like a whole separate thing. Right now, they're not discoverable. I think the intention is that they will be discoverable, but it can be something that's at least like on our page. Like there's a few different templates that are being like utilized right now. There's like location, which are like kind of like for travel logs, right? It's kind of like a travel account thing where it's like, this is a location and here's a guide on what you can do when you go to this place. And then there's like one for products, and then there's like a general post one. And I think the general post one is going to be really beneficial for artists coming up. Like I was even just thinking for my professional practice students, like this would be a really great way to like, almost like it could summarize an exhibition. It could summarize, you know, somebody's individual, like we could highlight, you know, a month, you know, of like 1 month we highlight volunteers and what they're doing or members and what they're doing and whatnot. And like we can create like a new guide. Like this is our January guide for our members, February guide for our members. And one of the bits of advice that I've got from like learning about this was to start like planning for guides like now, start like building up posts. Cause also like if you have like older posts on your account page that you make, you can circle back around to them and be like, this is how we got started or something, you know? And so like, you can almost like, it almost like gives an older post like new life. So it's like one of those things where like there is a lot of excitement around it, but it's like, it's still very new. But anyways, I thought I would like throw that out there.
So guides are essentially something that like involves past posting, right? So we wouldn't be able to do something like upcoming this January, here are all the things that are, we'd have to do something like, this is what we did last January, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, I mean, it could be too, like, you know, if it could be somebody else's post as well, if somebody else did the post. That's the nice thing about the guides is that like, you know, because especially with our account, we are doing a lot of things and like promoting our members through stories and whatnot. So we can just be like, you know, look at what our members are doing type thing. You know, a guide to what being a member looks like at RA Print Guild or something. But I just learned about that last night and it seemed pretty cool. So
Very cool. Yeah.
It is, yeah. We'll have to think about like how that will function and how it'll kind of mesh with the overall vibe of the Instagram. So I think as far as promoting members goes, everybody kind of down for doing that and starting to kind of, we'll specifically start with volunteers, work out any kind of kinks involved, and then see where it goes from there. Okay, cool. And then I think I'm going to hand it over to Kay to talk about how our previous takeover went, and any kind of like ways to improve that takeover, which we've already sort of started talking about. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think it went really well. To be honest, I was surprised and like honored that John reached out to us, because he was like at the back, he was at the front of my mind, but I don't have a, I don't know him very well, and I don't know anyone that knows him well, so I didn't really know if it was appropriate to reach out. But I think we just sort of need to lean into the fact that we have this organization as like a persona for us, and it's a professional opportunity. And I was just so pleased that like he reached out. And I think Dana also did a takeover, and she was amazing. I think that the structure we had was good. The thing I think that could make it a little bit better next time is maybe, because essentially I think like Becky and I were the two folks that were like pretty much on call. Like if there was any emails about it, if there was like messages, anything like that, it was like, okay, we got to take care of this right now. So maybe if we can just like, I don't know, maybe it was okay that both of us were doing that, but I felt kind of stressed out about it. I don't know if you did as well, but I definitely felt a little stressed about it. And to be honest, like, I think it went really well, given that we decided like a week before that we were going to do it, I think it went pretty awesomely. And yeah, I haven't gone back through all the messages to see if anybody like was saying anything specifically to us, but I was looking at my own Instagram stories, like people that were posting, and I noticed consistently people posting from our Instagram things to their stories. And that was like really exciting as well. So yeah, I think that's all I have. I hope that that's enough.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about involving a little bit more people, or maybe just even doing this in shifts so that it's like, one person from the Instagram team, which half of us are on the Instagram team, and then one person who's just an interim board member getting involved, or maybe it's 3 people that can kind of respond and be on call, because it was a little bit like, oh, I missed this message, or and I also think it's really valid what you said about feeling like, no, we're like a legitimate organization. We're not just like little podunk people, and because I reached out to John, and I reached out to, like, Brandon is the person who let me know about Dana. And I think having that kind of initiative and just saying, and I've reached out like through my personal Instagram, but at the same time, we are mutually beneficial. That is the point of our, process. And the worst thing that is going to happen is that person will be like, no, I don't want to do that. And that's the same as what was already happening. We already kind of assumed that they wouldn't want to, So it was also really great to have John. One thing that I have noticed, and I don't know very much about the Instagram algorithm, but I do think we should space out our takeovers a little bit more, because I think we did like one post where we hadn't posted for a little while that week. Then Dana posted, got a lot of traction, got a lot of views. And then immediately after that, we had more activity from John. And I think fewer people saw that just based on the analytics. And I think it's because of the algorithm, because there's really not much reason that fewer people should have seen that. So I think maybe what we should do is, and I've been thinking about this a lot, so this is kind of shifting into discussing like future takeovers, timelines, and types of priorities. But I've been looking at like not diversity holidays, but like looking at the calendar and thinking like, okay, well, what will we do for Pride Month? What will we do for Black History Month? And I'm kind of thinking about this idea of like Takeover Tuesdays. Does that sound like an interesting thing? Because most of our Instagram is already planned out week by week, you know, some of it's random, some of it's just like, oh, I got to promote this vote. But I think the more structure we can bring to it, the easier it'll be for more than one person to be involved in like posting those things and doing calls and such. But I think maybe, so we'll take, let's take Black History Month, for example. So in January, because Black History Month starts in February, we would put out a call. That way it's a month ahead of time. We get more interest, more members. I don't know if that's too far ahead of time. I'm more than willing to, you know, hash that out. But having that time to really get people to respond, because what we had with this experience was a couple of people came in late and responded, and they were like, oh, I'd love to do it. And I had to be like, we're not doing it right now anymore, but we'll keep you in mind, you know, for the future. So I think doing that, and then also divvying out the number of Tuesdays in that month and saying we'll have 4, I think there's going to be 4. I don't know if it's a leap year or not, but there should be 4 Tuesdays in February. So we'll have 4 printmakers take over each on a Tuesday, you know, and that way we have that kind of regularity, but they're also far enough apart that the content is diverse. And I think maybe that'll help game the algorithm. That's literally me taking a shot in the dark. But, you know, so Ruben, if you missed any of that, we were just talking about doing something like a Takeover Tuesday, where we basically allot a Tuesday to a certain person per month, and we promoted a month ahead. So we're using the Black History Month as an example. And we would promote it in January, and then we'd pick 4 printmakers to kind of post each on their own Tuesday. That way we're kind of gaming the algorithm, maybe. But yeah, what do you all think about that?
The only thing I would say is I have a issue with only asking people to take over in these specific months, because it's like putting a time, even though that's not our intention, it's like putting a cap on when we care about these issues. I know that's not our intention at all, but I feel like that's how it kind of comes across, because that's how I kind of felt with SGCI, with the whole the letters and the post about a black printmaker and this for a month. So I definitely think we should do these things for Pride Month, Black History Month, Hispanic Peoples Month, but I also think we should be doing takeovers outside of that.
Yeah, that actually, I probably should have elaborated a little bit more. Those were examples of times where it would be really regulated, and it would be like, no, this month we're only doing takeovers. But I do think literally every Tuesday we should have a takeover. And there aren't celebrations in every single month. Like March is Women's History Month. So yes, women, we're doing women, people who identify as women. But also that's a very broad category, because we could say people who identify as femme, you know, them presenting. How are we going to kind of talk about that? But I do think, I agree, well, I know that I agree with you. I do think it should be a constant. Every Tuesday we have a takeover. That's going to be something that maybe we're going to start with January. You know, that way we have time to drum up support for it. And interest, I guess, too.
Yeah, I'm wondering if instead of what if we have calls and we specifically reach out to people? Because if we're reaching out to people throughout the year that are, you know, women identifying printmakers, or indigenous printmakers, or Black printmakers, if we're reaching out to those people, it won't be throughout the year. It won't be this thing where it's only dedicated during this specific amount of time. It's no, we want these folks to talk about whatever they want to promote whenever they want, you know, it'll be, I hate using these words, but diverse and inclusive, and it'll be that, because we're making the effort to reach out to a variety of people that we want to hear from, you know, rather than it just being people coming to us saying we want to take over.
I'm seeing that I do think we should do that kind of combination of ways of addressing people and bringing people in. I'm seeing that maybe every Tuesday is overwhelming. There's the idea of doing every other Tuesday or like the first Tuesday in a month. So I think my question is, what if, I don't know, I'm very excited to share the platform because it's fun. But there's a part of me that's like, I'm worried that the first Tuesday in a month feels like not quite enough. And that might just be me personally, because there are so many people, like I don't want it to become a, something that kind of falls out of people's feed, if you know what I mean. Like I want it to be regularly spaced out in a way that's kind of overwhelming. Like I like the idea of overwhelming people and being like, yeah, hello, we're here. We've been here, you know? But I also kind of understand it's a lot to coordinate. So my personal preference would be every other Tuesday. If that makes sense.
If we did it like the first Tuesday of every month, and we're also doing it like like the specific months, like the specific history months, I think that's fine to do it like every Tuesday, because that's like an event, you know, like this is our, but I think, and so if we having these months, these were like weeks, because some of them are like week long, where we're doing it every Tuesday. And then we also have like the first or like last Tuesday in a month. I feel like that'll still be like constant enough where like we're still getting to like introduce a lot of people to different people without overwhelming them. Because I think I like the idea of being like, hi, we're here, look at all these people who have been left out of the conversation before. But I think if we throw too much at people, they're gonna like, and then they're just gonna like back away and run. And that is my worry, like coming on too strong and having people like pull back.
Yeah, I think it might be a good idea to space it out a little bit more. I do like what you're saying about having the events, those history months, kind of a bigger celebration where it's like, no, we are gonna like go ham right now. Because it's important for us to celebrate this month. That's part of the reason the month exists, you know. And then I saw that Kay said first and last Tuesday. And I also am seeing that Stephanie and Ruben are talking about maybe having a specific volunteer who handles the takeovers. I think I hesitate to say that because there are so many specific questions that people will have and have had. Like Dana had a lot of questions, John had a lot of questions. It really is like dedicatedly being glued to your phone. And those questions aren't necessarily something that a regular volunteer would be able to or feel comfortable answering. And so they might end up asking us anyway. And so I do think it's a good idea to have at least 2 people eyeballing those. And we do actually have a short, it's not an FAQ, but it's a how-to list that Kay created that kind of talks about like what our expectations are. And I think it can also get more specific as we get to that social media section of the bylaws. But I think for now, maybe doing something a little bit more with more hands on deck so that it's not that overwhelming kind of, hey, random person who's doing this out of the goodness of your heart, why don't you Velcro your phone to your face for, 2 weeks out of the month, I also think it's a little bit much because that person will also, like, is that person going to feel like they're the ones who has to choose who we are showing? Are they going to feel like they're the person who has to, send out those messages to say, yes, we've accepted? There's a little bit too many working parts to put that all on one person.
I think I just meant well, I guess I don't know all the nuances of it, but I guess I thought just they would help them, like once they've been accepted, they would help them with, I'm sorry, my cat's very upset. And she just really wants attention, I think. But I thought it would just be a person who helps them like with the login, and like they've already been accepted by whoever, and they would just like navigate the questions, and there would be, yeah, the FAQ or the list of like questions that have already existed. And I think that list can just continue to become longer because obviously like there are questions we don't think of until they get asked, and those can get added to the list. And I think it'll just take time, but maybe it's not just one person, maybe it's, yeah, a couple people who aren't already doing a bunch of other things. Like maybe they don't have time to do like meetings and stuff or graphics or stuff, but they can help with the Instagram, and that's a way they contribute. I don't know. That was kind of what I was thinking. Not that they would be exclusively like accepting people or reaching out to people or anything like that, but instead like watching their phone in case the person has questions on that Tuesday or that Monday before Tuesday. If that makes sense. That's what I was thinking. I don't know if that's still overwhelming. No, it's Willow.
Yeah, I'm with you, Stephanie. I feel like we can do that in like as soon as we were talking about like assigning it to someone, immediately my head went exactly where Becky's did, where I was like, well, I feel like, I was at my phone for like the whole day and I totally missed things. And I ended up like wanting to ask Becky things anyway, even though I was like the dedicated person. But I think once we like have a rhythm, like after we like 5 takeovers, I think we can definitely know exactly. I can't imagine there will be like questions forever, there will be a point where like we've gotten every question ever thrown at us and we have an FAQ with every single one of those things there, and we can point the person to that, and like maybe an interim board member can be on call anyway with that specific person, like they know who to contact, like which one of us got to contact about it, and then all of us are in line with each other, so we'll be able to say the same thing. It won't be the same, we have to like keep going back to each other to know what's going on.
And maybe that just alternates every week, like who it is. I mean, obviously that'll change based on like how busy everyone is, but yeah, I was thinking that it would be clunky in the beginning and then it would eventually be like more formulaic. So
Fingers crossed. I think it will be. I really hope so.
Yeah, I think that that's a good idea, having that dedicated little like, hey, just keep an eye on your phone, see if anybody messages you. One of the issues is that we communicate some official things through emails, and so they'll send emails and messages. And then also what ended up happening on my end was I got asked questions by John through my personal Instagram because I had contacted him through my personal Instagram. So it may be that we, instead of using personal Instagrams to say like, hey, you want to do this? We can use that our public facing RA Print Guild, account. And then it's a little bit easier to keep that at least a little bit more all in one place. And I do think it's a good idea to have at least one of us on the interim board following up with that, whoever it is, that whichever Instagram volunteer chooses to be on that call for that period of time, just to say to them like, hey, how are things going? Do you need something from me? Because it's a lot. It's simultaneously a lot and not very much, because it's like, okay, I'm being messaged a lot by this person. It's really great to get to know them, but also, am I doing the right thing? Like, am I missing anything? It's good to have that kind of feedback loop kind of between somebody that it's like, okay, yeah, you're doing this and we're doing that, and etc. Right? As Stephanie said, yeah, so maybe the takeover team is watching the Instagram and the email. So just to recap, I want to kind of talk, like revisit everything, because we talked about a couple of different options. So are we thinking about just doing the every first Tuesday on the months that aren't like Pride Month or Women's History Month, etc.?
I agree with Steph that first and last 2 Tuesdays a month would be fine.
Is everybody okay with that?
Because you still kind of get like back to back
Mhm.
in a sense.
And that could always change too. So at least in the beginning, just so, because it's probably going to be us anyway. So making it as stressless as possible, even though it'll still be.
Well, and it's also kind of nice because all the stress is like forward facing instead of, for me, it was nice because like up until this point, I've been doing most of the posting and most of the story stuff. And so the days that it was, I was like getting notifications and I was like, I don't have to check that. That's not for me. But it's really nice to have that kind of content and seeing how people are engaging with that content as well, you know. Okay, so we'll exclude, so the other thing we need to talk about is which months and or holidays we'd like to celebrate. So what we celebrated this last time was Native American Heritage Day, I believe is what it's called. I get that title and the month title confused, but that's the day after Thanksgiving. And so that's why, we wanted to do it this weekend. That specific weekend. But let me open up, I have a specific calendar that I found. So like I said, March is Women's History Month. We all know February is Black History Month. And if I remembered how my phone worked, this would go a little faster. Does anybody know about anything else while I'm, fiddling around with my phone?
I think there are like months about
Mental awareness.
yeah, and like disabilities and
Mm.
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think we all know, I think Pride Month is June.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a week dedicated to transgender awareness, so that's something as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know that was what, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah. Okay, so I've got, Autism Awareness Month. Well, okay. April is Celebrate Diversity Month, and it's also Autism Awareness Month. So I'm not sure.
I've been over the other one because we're already doing that 24/7, 365. So
Yeah.
like diversity button, fuck that, no.
It's also really vague. It feels way too
Like,
hey, we covered it.
Brown people exist. Yes. Box checked.
Did it.
We found racism. So let's see. We will also have, so this also like breaks down the days, but I have it on my phone. So maybe I'll send a message to myself and then send it through the chat as well. May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. I have a hard time saying that because of my own inability to speak. So I think that's an important month for us to celebrate as well.
And October is like Mexican Heritage Month, or it's like Latinx, right? There's something in October, I thought, that had to do with, or September, something in the fall. But I only remember talking about in elementary school.
Hispanic Heritage Month.
I knew it was a fall month, but again, we only did it in elementary school, and that was a while ago. So.
What? No, that was like yesterday. Okay, so July I think is a little bit more open, according at least to this calendar. August is a little more open as well. And then it goes straight to September from June with Hispanic awareness, or no, what? Hispanic heritage. And then I know November is Native. Actually, I don't know if it's Indigenous people or if it's Native American. Oh, I'll check, hold on.
I just know that Indigenous is preferred over Native American, so. But I mean, still check because, but yeah.
So October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and I'm not sure what to do with that information. That's very specific. It's also LGBT, I didn't know that. It's also LGBT History Month, which, cool. So I guess, do you guys want to celebrate? I mean, we could do it both times. Who cares? Like, let's go. I'm down. But
either that or making infographics that we share during that month, which could be really cool.
That's true.
Or both. Porque no los dos.
Yeah, maybe if we're doing it every other, then the time someone's not doing a takeover during these months specifically, we could be sharing like the history graphics about these things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which like the graphics could also be experiences from our members who are part of that history or heritage. Because I feel like that, I don't know how to word this without it sounding like using people, but like that will, I think getting stories from people will make it seem like we care more than just like pulling information off the internet, which we do care more, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I think we should also think like, I think we should always think about like, is it mutually beneficial, right? So if the membership tells us like sharing my story was not particularly beneficial, or I don't see how that would be particularly beneficial, then we don't do it, you know? And I think maybe that's something we put a pin in until we do the Instagram bylaws, maybe. Just because it involves taking that information from other people. I don't know.
It could also be not necessarily telling your story, but telling a story, you know? Because like, I know for me, like I'm not somebody as like a, you know, as a brown person, like, I don't know that I would necessarily, I don't have like a lot of like Chicano like roots for myself. Like it's just never, even though it is part of me, like I don't feel connected to it. I feel more, you know, like I feel more like to my split white side. But that being said, that doesn't mean that I couldn't talk about other things. Like I could talk about my own personal research, or like the way that like race does integrate into my work, or the way that I think about it in a particular way. So I could tell a story versus my story. And that could be something that we just keep it open to proposal from whoever's taking over.
Let me share this link with you all as well. I think, hold on, it's taking 100 years. I think it's a good idea for us to consider what to do with the, I almost called it like dead air, but it's not really that, but that, you know, time in between, so that we are all able to say like, yeah, no, we're not even just able to say, but so that we're all working towards that goal of, you know, mutual growth and education as well. And I think maybe sharing stories, maybe just sharing infographics, maybe a combination of the two. The one thing about infographics is that they are going to take a lot of time to put together. So that might be something, or unless we find them from someone else. Yes, Kay.
Yeah, I think that we, like, our energy and how we spend that energy and time is really important. And I don't know that we necessarily need to like make all of our own graphics for this, whenever there are like so many other like content creators out there like already doing it. It's a way to like promote them. Again, like mutually beneficial things. I think that maybe we could strive to do that rather than trying to create all of our own. And I saw a lot of that over the summer, and it sort of came off as like, I don't know, it was just like, again, like checking the box rather than actually feeling like true caring. So I think maybe further discussion about that would be important.
Yeah, I think that might be something we bring up to the volunteers at large at first, and then later membership at large, if it's something, you know. It also could be something we wait to deal with until incorporation, you know, or until Instagram at least is voted on. But I do think keeping that in mind and thinking like, okay, how do we continue that mission in perpetuity through our actions, you know, because there may be better other ideas that suit the membership better, where they're like, well, we don't really want to see more graphics. We don't want to see more like easy imagery. We want to see more like firsthand testimonials or things like that. You know, you never know what is going to be more successful and what people will prefer. Go ahead, Ruben.
What I was going to say too, with the like once guides get kind of figured out on Instagram, that could be where, you know, sharing the infographics that somebody else has created and citing them. But then like our side can focus more on the printmaker side, because that is kind of our core, you know, element is the printmaking part, you know. And so like, how does that stuff like intersect within printmaking, and who are the printmakers that we could like, you know, from history, like highlight or something, or even contemporary?
That's a good point too, is there's a huge historical source that we don't get taught
Yeah.
in school that I think, you know, our platform could also be helping with, so that it becomes less about statistics and less about, you know, we could even think about it as, you know, the takeovers are contemporary, and then the, you know, downtime, as Olivia said, is more about the historical, and having that kind of mission of like, we've always been here and we continue to be here, and these are what our experiences have been and are, instead of, you know, focusing so much on like data, which like I love data, I'm a very big nerd, I know, but it also doesn't mean the same thing to some people as it does to me, you know. So maybe that's something to kind of think about, having that focus of, you know, longitudinal information. Sorry for all the data words, and I'll stop. So maybe thinking about past and present, I guess, is the best way to put it. The other thing is talking about on those Tuesdays that are that downtime, are we going to be doing story posts more, or will we be doing actual posts? You know, actual posts take a little bit more time and energy, because we have to think about like, okay, what's the image going to be if we're doing something historical? Do we just like Google search an image? Is that like okay? Do we Google search an image and then put our background behind them? What kind of visual do we kind of want to do with that?
Well, and I think for that particular frequency, could it be like, are we thinking like in terms of posts, like how many posts we do like once a week for like us, and then stories be more active?
I think
also,
so.
Sorry if that's redundant if we talked about it.
It's okay. It's not. That actually is something we should probably talk about. So what I've been trying to do is at least have posts 3 times a week. The takeover helps a lot with that, because I don't have to come up with like original content. Nobody on the Instagram team does. But then also we have to think about like, we're also going to be posting votes. We don't want those to get buried. We're also going to be posting announcements about the videos. We don't want those to get buried. Things like that need to stay kind of actual inner workings, I think, in my opinion, need to stay a little bit more, at least equally loud, until we're at least incorporated. Because I think people need to know, like, this is happening. We've got this transparency. We're not, you know, drowning out that transparency. That's an equally important part of our message. But that's also my personal opinion. Maybe it is better that we have more like platform-based, here's, you know, history, here's all of this kind of, I guess, more enjoyable information, more casual information, I think. So, I mean, what do you all think about that?
I just think about how we're supposed to be a place for like safe learning, and how like education and knowledge is a big part of our platform. So I feel like it's also like, I understand what you're saying about like not wanting to seemingly bury all this like participate, like places for our members to participate. But I also think that the content we're talking about right now, that's like history and education of print and showing we've been here and will continue to be here. I think that might, in my opinion, takes kind of precedence. If they are both equal, or the like histories and stuff is like maybe a little bit more important. But like you said, maybe that it just changes after we incorporate, because we are right now trying to get off the ground, you know? So maybe right now it's equal, and then as we are like established, it can kind of, because I also think like with posts, like even no matter what we do, the algorithm isn't always in people's favor anyway. So there's a chance that no matter what we do, people won't see it that much. So all we can do, especially with posts, is just like keep being like, hey, hi, hello, did you see this thing? And we can do that through stories and other means like the guides that Ruben was talking about. So I don't think doing this other thing is going to diminish our transparency, especially if we keep trying to be transparent, you know?
So do you think kind of having an attitude of, I'm thinking logistically. So right now I'm trying to keep up on top of 3 posts per week, where it's essentially, usually it's like voting information, YouTube information, and then a Meet Our Members post. So I think maybe what we think about is in the future, we will have more posts per week. Does that make sense? And so those 3 big things are still there. We still have that transparency, but in a way, like, especially once we're at least voted on the bylaws for Instagram, right? There will be more that we know we can post, more that we feel confident posting. We'll also have like a settled, you know, attitude on what we share from our membership, what kinds of things we're going to be doing. More calls are going to be going out. So I think maybe 3 minimum is what we think about. We think about like transparency as our bottom line, that minimum that we do, and everything else gets built on top of it. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm being really vague, but you know, having that idea of like, okay, and then we'll also be doing the educational stuff, and that educational stuff doesn't have a limit to it. It just can get put on top. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I think that all makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a good goal to shoot for. And I also want to point out that we're sending emails, right? Like people are getting things directly to their inbox that remind them to vote. We also have on Instagram, we have like up to 10 pictures per post. So, I mean, we could mix some of these things as well. I see a lot of folks who are like trying to make sure that things are getting seen. Like the main point of the post could be like something educational wise. And at the end, we have a graphic that says, hey, please remember to vote. You know, like that's not the worst thing ever either, you know?
And we have the Discord also to be a place for like reminders, even though I hate it and still don't understand it, but it's there. It's there for people to use.
Yeah, like if they're not seeing it on Instagram, hopefully they're seeing it in their email inbox if they gave us their email, or hopefully they're seeing it on Discord or in our stories. Like we could also take posts that we've already made. Like we don't have to make, you know, a post every time. Like we can take the one that we made last week and stick it in the story. I, as an Instagram user, love stories. I just spend like 15 minutes at a time just like going through them. So
yeah, I think that's a good idea. And I think maybe the only limit I would put on kind of tacking on the reminders to vote would be like Meet Our Members or anything that like is promoting our members, because I want the spotlight to be on them. But if it's like, here's a YouTube video, also please vote, you know, that makes perfect sense, because it's, you know, about that kind of, those posts we can kind of categorize mentally as membership posts, right? And then I think Meet Our Members is that mutually beneficial, which sometimes overlaps. We'll talk about like a Venn diagram. And then we've got another, you know, section that is that educational that also is overlapping with Meet Our Members. And so maybe we don't put the voting at the end of an educational post as well, but anything that is like actual membership information, reminder to vote, you know? So whenever we put up this YouTube video, we'll be like, P.S. vote. Did we do a good job? Please tell us. That kind of thing I think will be good.
And I just looked at the ratification form, and at the end I just wanted to like remind myself whether or not we were asking people where they were like seeing the thing, you know, like seeing the content. So I think that'll be helpful to be able to like look at that data as well and say like, okay, they are actually getting it from the email or from Instagram or whatever.
Yes, and I'm so excited because the mission statement has much, much, much more people getting it from Instagram. And I'm just like, that's so great because that means more people are engaging with us that way. And I think Instagram's a much easier way to stay on top of what an organization is doing for me personally, because I have the attention span of like a 1-year-old baby. So for me, it's like nice to be like, boop, 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 boop. Oh, I need to do this thing, you know? And I think the emails are also really working well. I think also, I'm curious to see if it's working for a different generation, but that's a whole other conversation that we'll probably have later. But yeah, so I think we've got some really good like thoughts about the takeovers in the future. We'll probably start this. I guess I'll ask, like, when do you all want to start doing regular takeovers so that we can kind of get through that clunky period? Should we start in January and put out a call now, or should we contact people now? How do you all want to do that? Okay, cool. So
I'm almost wondering, sorry, I had a thought and I was trying to like process it. I'm almost wondering, as the interim, well, never mind. I'm completely taking that thought back. I was like thinking like, what do we set the precedent as interim board by doing the takeovers? But I know we had like, that would be like oversaturation of us because like a lot of us have already done our meet our members posts, so never mind.
I'm seeing pretty much everybody says like after the new year. So yeah, maybe reaching out. So should we do the reach out first, like contact people individually through the Print Guild Instagram specifically? So I think maybe in order to not have too many respondents, which I know sounds wild, but like I have a very hard time being like, sorry, you took too long, you know. Maybe what we do is each of us has a number of people to reach out to. Like maybe we each reach out to 3, and then is it a first come first serve? Do we jury them? I don't like really the idea of doing that.
Well, don't we have like a few people who wanted to take over the week of whenever it was? It feels like 5 weeks ago, but I know it was like maybe 2. Anyway, don't we have those folks who still, they're interested, but they missed out? Why don't we just start with them and say, hey, you know, we had a meeting and we would love to have you. You know, we talked about it and brainstormed, and we think that we're going to continue with takeovers. I don't remember the names. I'm so sorry, but
It was Kaylin. It was Kaylin Barnowski. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't remember the person that I had. I sent like 7 different messages, so I'll look. But I definitely can get back in contact with them and see if they're willing to do it in January, right?
Okay. Yeah, and my thing too is like, why like just have the list like grow, and then like we can meet when we meet. We can be like, okay, let's schedule this all out real quick. Mm-hmm. You know, we've got from this pool of like throwing this out there, just because actually my colleague Laura is doing this with her Reflections on Color website, but like she has 100 people already like lined up for like interviews and posts. So it's just like, I'll get to you when I get to you, you know, like you've been added to the queue. And then we can schedule at a time when we'll be like, how does this month sound? Mm-hmm. You know, we can give them like a month, like the dates or the months or whatever.
That's amazing. We could have them scheduled out 6 months and we don't have to think about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. And then, so the trajectory will be essentially starting with the people who wanted to do it before, checking in with them, and then just, you know, reaching out to people that were like, hey, it'd be real cool if you wanted to do a takeover. One question I have that kind of goes back to the idea of precedent is, when we do have official members, should we actually just start reaching out only to members? instead of to famous people, you know, or a combination of both?
I was gonna say, I say yes until we don't have a person that like, because it depends on who wants to be a member, you know? So like if we're in Autism Awareness Month or week, I don't know how long that is, and hypothetically we don't have anybody who is part of that, then like we should reach out to other members of the print community, I feel like. And maybe like our members get, I don't know, actually, now I'm like talking through it, because I mean, obviously we want to help out our people, but I feel like we should also, I don't know, because like some people I know, they say I'm not like a group person. Like I don't do groups, I don't do organizations, and I think some of it's from like negative experiences they've had. So, but that I feel like we shouldn't penalize them for an experience they had that they don't want to repeat, you know? I don't know. I feel like I think maybe it's like we decide that in the moment type of thing. Like you're not going to be able to plan out every element.
Well, and even talking about planning it, that could just be something that we put up for a vote when we get to Instagram bylaws, where we say, is the Instagram only to promote other members? Or can we also promote people outside of the guild, you know? I don't know. Because I feel a little bit uncomfortable making that decision for anyone. And in some ways, we could file the promotion of people who are like people like John Hitchcock, who wasn't necessarily following us before, right? Might not have known about what was going on. We could say like, okay, well, we reached out to this person in the with the intention of education, which is a big tenet for us, right? But also we have mutual aid. So is it okay to do both, so that it's basically like we're following both guidelines? And how will we, kind of like what Olivia was saying, how do we decide which one is the higher priority? You know, I don't know why I'm juggling, but which one is that higher priority? Which one has the, you know, if somebody that is part of the guild wants to do this activity and somebody who isn't part of the guild but is an important person historically wants to do it, or within the community wants to do it, do we give that position? I guess I wouldn't even say do we give that position, but like who do we put on the wait list, so to speak, you know? Where we can say, yeah, we'd love for you to do it, but let's do it in a couple of months. You know, who do we send that message to, and how do we decide that? And I think that's something that's more for the membership to decide and less for us, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I guess it depends on, like, if we took a vote and they say we want to see each other, we want to be supported, or do we want to see, you know, people that we don't know and are, you know, just like absolute rock star printmakers that are willing to. My preference is, I know we're like not deciding it, but like my preference is to always prioritize membership, and yeah, that's where I stand on it. And I think it's really important that the space does exist as educational as well. But in general, like if it came down to like a member really wants to take over and be featured versus this other person, I think that other person can just wait a week or two, you know. But putting it to a vote is super important. Yes.
And this is maybe just for my like own sake, because I am, oh, sorry, Stephanie.
No, don't worry. You're fine. I'll have my question in my brain.
Okay. Yeah, it's just really quick, but like, if we're gonna do like 2 takeovers a month, like, do we do takeover 1 is member only, takeover 2 non-member, or like open?
Steph, did you want to go, or do you want us to like?
Oh, I was just waiting to make sure there was no other. I was waiting to be told I could speak.
I'll just put it in the chat then, and you can just go ahead.
Okay. Well, my question I think is kind of brief, and maybe there is an answer, but do we have it defined like what a member is? Because Barbara asked me today, and I know you probably do, but maybe we just need to like reiterate it, because Barbara asked me today if that would include her, and I said you get the emails and you're following the thing and you're wanting to be a part of it. So I think that's a yes, but
Yeah.
I
So,
think maybe some people aren't reaching out because they're not sure.
mhm. Yeah, it's a wild thing because what Olivia and I had been doing essentially was saying like, well, we know the volunteers are invested. They've given us like an investment of time and energy. So we know that they are members, right? We have this kind of operating assumption of membership for them. But also that's something that I kind of want to re-examine today as well, because do we consider everybody on the mailing list a member? Do we consider everybody on the Instagram who's following us
Right.
a member? And if we consider everybody on the Instagram, that's tricky territory because we're followed by other organizations. And I don't know how we feel about organizations having
Right.
membership status.
Right.
So I think our default has been like, for sure, volunteers.
Mhm.
And then from that point, I feel fairly confident that saying most of the mailing list is also going to be involved, but I'm not entirely sure. So
Mhm.
it's kind of a gray area, no real answer. But Barbara is part of the membership because they are a volunteer. So
Yes.
I don't know.
That's what
They can, but
that's what my brain thought too, but I was like, maybe I should clarify what this means. So
and then Olivia said awareness months could be open, but every other Tuesdays would only be members. That's a good idea, possibly. Yeah, I think maybe what I'll do, or what we will do, because whoever needs to go to this meeting will go to it, but maybe what we'll do is at the next, not the next incorporation meeting, but I think maybe the meeting after that we'll do social media once we know what the board members are actually supposed to be doing. I think the next incorporation meeting, at least one or two of us will be there and kind of propose these different ways of deciding who gets what promotion, how we kind of whittle out our priorities, and then what we might do is send out a vote with those specific questions to the membership. Okay, so a year from now, after we have a rhythm, yeah, that's true. We might have more interest in takeovers. We might have to do them more frequently. But we also might have more volunteers. And even if we don't have more volunteers, we're going to have more official capacities in which to work with us. So we'll be able to say, like, we have this committee, you know, that I think will be a little bit different too. What did you want to say, Ruben?
I was also just thinking, like, looking more future, like being more future oriented and thinking about the regional membership, or like the regional representatives that that was originally proposed in the very, very first meeting at the beginning. And then, you know, once, and I know this was said, I'm pretty sure it was 5 years down the line, we were thinking about conferences, right? But then like, those are those types of like exclusive benefits for the membership. And so like, those are those more like tangible things that I think like would help in like the situation that Stephanie was bringing up with Barbara.
That's a very good point. And I think you also bring up a good point about, like, if we think about our original intention, we have a lot of different things that were specific to members. Like, we already have one thing that is specific to members, that exhibition. We're not taking outside people. Like, you have to, I think what we might say for that, and we're going to kind of have to talk about that a little bit too, is we might say you have to be following us on Instagram and part of the mailing list in order to be part of this show.
And voting, maybe? But if you don't vote, you're not.
Well, but we
because I feel like
anonymously, so I don't know how we would.
We could just spin it. Like,
yeah, like honor system it. Like, we're not going to police anybody, but like, because I think about, there's a lot of things that I follow on Instagram and I'm on the mailing list, but I'm not
right.
a part of it now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I don't think we should have like a Discord requirement, because that's too many different platforms to like be like, you have to be on these, but you know.
Maybe the wording is like a participating or a member who's participating in votes. Yeah, but I was thinking saying something, yeah, like an individual, like making it clear that even if you're a group, you don't count as an individual. Like you are not an individual as an organization. Yeah, so making a clear definition of like what a member is, I think.
Yeah, and Kay has also added the word active to that, and I think that's a really good
Yeah, that's a
point.
good
An
word.
active
Mhm.
member,
Mhm.
you know, constitutes a person who's actively voting, part of the mailing list. And I think the things that we can check are the mailing list and the Instagram. So I think having those two on there will make people feel like they do have to like kind of follow that honor system and be like, oh, well, they can see if I'm on these two, so maybe they can see if I'm voting, which like we can't. And we're not like trying to spook you or anything, but you know, maybe that.
I just realized we're gonna know that anyway. So, oh well.
Yeah, but you know, hopefully they're, you know, if they're watching this video, they are an active participant, you know, like that's fine.
Because I think that could be why people aren't submitting, or I don't know how many people have asked to be included in the meet our members post, but that could be why if people aren't submitting, that could be why. And that would be my worry with the exhibition, is that people would think folks could think they couldn't, you know, apply to be in it because they're not sure.
If what their membership is. Yeah, and I think if we say it out loud, we're like, this is
Yeah, I agree.
you. Yes, Liv.
I was just saying, I feel like this is a good natural segue into the WVU exhibition because it's like 109. So
can I put a pin in that? Because there's a couple more things I wanted to just let everybody know about. So we are going to need to revise the Instagram guidelines for the takeover how to. We already kind of talked about that. So who would be willing to like go back into the Instagram guidelines and kind of add some of this information? Okay. And okay. Fight for it. No, I'm just kidding. So, okay. How about Kay, if you don't mind, would you go back into the takeover how to since you drafted that originally and revise that? And then maybe Olivia will do the Insta guidelines, the overarching ones. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yes. And that's on the drive, yes?
Yes, both are on the drive, right? I know, Kay, you put the takeover how to somewhere on the drive. You told me where and I immediately forgot, but it's there.
But I will find it, yes.
Okay.
And I'd be like happy to have like input from anybody else, like feel free, you know.
Yeah, feel free to send us both or either or everyone. Feel free to just like shoot a text and be like, okay, this is done. Can like, because I also like to have at least one person go, what are you doing? You know, so that I can have like the clearest language. I don't know if it's necessary for for us to wait to hear back from everybody, because that we are doing a lot of really time sensitive stuff and we're all busy. Y'all are especially busy. Those of you who are still doing school. Like I'm done. So I'm just like floating around in the ether like, hey, so I'm sorry that I keep asking you a million questions in the middle of the day. But, you know, just having one person kind of peek at it and see. And they're also not permanent documents, so don't feel like you have to include absolutely everything. I think it's really important to just have like a little bit of the revision specifically for like, okay, this is how often we're going to do the takeovers. This is, you know, first and third Tuesdays, you know, with the exception of months, that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. Plus it's really good to have another person look at it to be like, did I miss something? Because we all might have taken very different notes. So, okay. That's one thing I wanted to talk about. And then the last thing is meet our members. So we are having, Stephanie had mentioned, we are having some issues with people actually like uploading that information. We've only sent out requests to volunteers. So hopefully they know that and I have said in a couple of the emails, like we're trying this, it's a trial period specifically with our volunteers. So please send us, you know, that kind of information. Okay, and Barbara and Stephanie will both upload theirs. That'll help because that'll give us 2 more weeks. One thing I'm wondering is, should we do that weekly still, or should we do that every other week?
I think weekly,
Weekly?
personally. Just because there's not always something to say, like I think getting, especially while we're still very brand new, it's good to get like people's faces out there and like, this is who we are. Like if our priority right now is transparency, I think having weekly announcements, reminders of like who we are is good. Like what we're made up of, who we're made up of.
Yes, we're a spooky mega monster. Have you ever seen, I think it's, this is very tangential, but have you seen Gravity Falls, that like Halloween monster that's just made up of all the candy that nobody
Yes.
wants to eat? And it was just like, no, I'm going to eat you. Yeah, we're that, but more desirable candy.
I think with the Meet Our Members too, I'd like to propose a more like interventionist strategy, like literally just go bug some of the more like volunteer people and be like, hey, want to do this? Can actually not, do you want to, can I get your info? And I think like maybe we can start with the volunteers and maybe be a little more like forceful about like requesting it, because I think like some people, I don't know, I just know me, like sometimes like if I'm involved in like a big group thing and like somebody else like takes over, I'm like, cool, I don't have to do anything. You know, I can stay like hidden in a way, but then like if I get like, I don't know, weird word called out about it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll go do it. You know, and I need that. I need that actually. It keeps me, it's someone holding me accountable.
Well, it really could also be that there are some people who are like, there might be people who are like, I'm not sure like where I fall on the membership status, or like there might be people who are like, oh, I haven't been able to do very much this semester, so I feel bad if you promote me as a volunteer. And it's like, okay, but like also do it.
Yeah.
we sent you the email because we wanted you to do it. So
yeah. Because like I'm looking at our whole member list right now, and we have just so many like, there are so many cool people that I think it would be great. Like we have Carrie Skenga, Aaron Zona, like Ileana, and I'm just like, why? And honestly, I think it's really just a matter of like, they did it really like some of them may have done it very passively, just to be like in the loop, but it's like, hey, I see you and I'm thinking of you and I want you to like be like put up on the pedestal. And I would probably prioritize more as volunteers first.
Okay, so that's something that we'll do. We'll be a little bit more aggressive. Who is comfortable with doing that? Who feels like they have the time to kind of, you don't have to do it all in one day. It can be like a person, 2 people a day, but.
Yeah, I can do that. I can, especially like finals week for the community college is next week. And then the week after is finals week for KCAI.
Okay, cool. And so of course we'll have that, like you said, the precedent or the preference. That's not the right word either. But first, priority, there we go. The priority will go to volunteers. And then Stephanie made a good point about like the 2 people that we've already had do the takeovers, could also do a Meet Our Member if they would like to. And then, yeah, I think that's a good idea. So if Stephanie and Barb can get their stuff in, then that will give you 2 weeks to kind of get interactions going. And that I think will be really helpful. But yeah, okay, cool. So with that, now we can hop over to the WVU show. And so Kay has made a Google form that they'll be showing us. And then also Kay and Olivia have worked more closely with this. I've just been kind of on the outside saying, hey, what about this? So I'm going to hand over the kind of mic to them.
Can you enable, what's it called? Participant screen sharing? I didn't even think about that.
Did that work? Did I do the right button?
Yes.
Yay.
Cute. My face is so close to the camera right now. I'm sorry. I just feel like I need to be really close to it.
I do the same thing, Kay. And I always get like, whoa.
Okay. So I made this form after talking. My internet is bad. All right. Oh, my connection's unstable. That's fun. Okay. Holler at me if if things are like so slow that it doesn't work. Okay. So this is the form that I made based off of like information that we talked about at the last meeting, and then individually with Becky and Olivia. We don't have a title yet. I feel like we should probably title it something super cool. But yeah, basically we decided there'd be no submission fee. We thought that was best, make it free. In terms of eligibility, it's members and volunteers of RIPG. So I was also like in the same headspace as Stephanie, where I was like, I actually feel like maybe we need to clarify for members like what that is. So maybe like an email or something can go out about that. And then there will be, I think that'll help us like not get as many emails after we announce this about like, am I a member, you know? And we decided that 16 by 20 inches in size would be best, because shipping things larger than that, especially if it's like an unframed print, might be kind of a disaster. And we're still working out like shipping details. We'll get there. And one of the big things is that this is a juried exhibition, so a submission does not guarantee acceptance. One, because there's like space issues, and two, it's not that we're trying to be exclusive, it's just we have space issues really. And eventually we would like to have shows that invite like other kinds of you know, work that engages the spirit of print, that might have like three-dimensional elements, multiple components. Maybe it's more sculptural or like installation based, but we just can't do that for this one. And then in terms of shipping, we decided that, this is what we're thinking, is that artists are going to be responsible for shipping costs, at least for now. And we have like a rough schedule that we're working out. Olivia is talking with Joe about that, and they're deciding like what would be best, but this is a rough schedule. And I think that's pretty much it. In terms of like the way that people are submitting things, I've used this way in the past and it's worked really well. I have images to us of the work, and then they basically make a Google Drive or a Google like folder, and then they share a link with us that has like the images, and then I've asked them to create like a like an inventory list for us to look at as well, and then of course like a statement and a bio. And I think that's everything that I had. Olivia?
I feel like I just had a lot of questions to pose to the group. And first of all, I have to say Kay did an amazing job putting all this together, with not a lot of help from me because I didn't really know too much. But something I wanted to pose was mailing all of the work, because I mean, we could do, I like the idea of it, there being no submission fee, but I also think logistically sending, let's just say we have 20 participants and 20 prints. So that's 20 prints coming from all over the country getting sent to Joe at WVU. And I don't know, like, if that's a greater risk of losing something, having that many things come to him, or is that like not the best use of his time? Making him look for all of these separate elements. And then if it's going to Brandon Sanderson afterwards, like, would we, how do we want to do that? So I was thinking maybe, and I can be this role.
Sorry to interrupt you, Olivia. I don't know if I've told everyone about that. So
I
there
was
is,
just about to say.
yeah, there is the potential that this could become a traveling exhibit, but we are not for sure in any capacity. And so we're not necessarily putting it on the call. What we might just say is there is the potential that this becomes a traveling exhibit. Because Brandon reached out to me and asked if I would want, to show there afterwards, but we kind of have to figure out some more details before we can decide that. And then also, if we're going to do that, who's paying for the shipping to and from? So those are some questions we have, but I'm going to hand it back over to Olivia. Sorry.
And like, I really try.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, my connection is so crummy. Yeah, there's also potential by, I mean, I don't know how long Joe would want to like have it up, but if it's several months, then like by that time we could be incorporated by then. We'll be eligible to apply for grants. We could ask for membership fees, or we could like solicit members for some funds. And then I was also thinking, if we didn't want to make it a free call, we could ask for like $10 from each person, which I know is like still a lot to ask from people. It's not compared to other things, but I know that $10 is like very meaningful, like to me. So we could do that, or it could be like a sliding scale thing, and we could promise to refund people their money if like for whatever we don't use. Like there's other options as well. I just don't want any of us to end up eating the cost, because like we shouldn't have to do that. Like none of us should have to do that. And I agree. I don't know about Joe having to look for like 20 packages. So maybe there's a way that we can talk about like how many pieces we can actually take, like whether we take measurements of the space or what. What were you going to say, Stephanie? I'm sorry.
Oh, don't be sorry. I just didn't want, I just had, I don't think it would be, I mean, Joe knows that there's the potential for having to look for 20 packages, and he's done a lot of print exchanges, and I don't think it would be a big deal. Like, I don't think he would have proposed this. Like he's aware of that part of it. So I don't think he would have proposed it, not being aware of that, if that makes sense. And it's all unframed work because it's going in the cases, right, Olivia?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then as for like shipping to Brandon, I feel like there's a potential to just put all of those boxes into another box and just mail them. And then that way they still have the return shipping on them. I don't know. Yes. Yes, that's all I have to say.
I was also thinking too, I mean, yeah, like exactly what you said, Stephanie, was like, what if like we shipped like an empty box to Joe? Like I could make like a big like box that could in theory house all of the prints, especially if they are, 16 by 20. I can also like, get like, some pre-made stuff where like all the prints can just go, and then like that's one big box could then ship to Brandon Sanderson. And that could just be something that like, I don't know, I don't think that would be too bad, especially like an empty box would be really lightweight.
The other thing too is that Joe has a show in those cases. Like he like makes a plan for there to be shows in those cases, and he has people send him them. So he sometimes has money from grants that he writes to do that. So
I'm gonna ask about that. I was like, does he have access to like university funds maybe?
Mhm.
yeah, he definitely does. And this is something he does frequently. So I would imagine that it would still be the same case.
And I know for a fact that like shipping a lot of the time through a university is covered by the department. And so it could be that he ships it to Brandon at his department, and then that potentially, but that's also something that's like maybe, but we don't know. So we would need to ask. But that would be ideal. The other option is I don't live that far away from West Virginia, and John has family that I haven't met in that area, my husband. And so it could be that we just visit his family during that time and just pick it up and bring it back to Brandon, because I'm 2 hours away from, well, not really, I'm like an hour away from his house, but we don't need to talk about that. But I could drop it off at, his house and do it from there. So there are a couple of different ways we could do it. I think the ideal though is seeing if Joe does have that capacity to ship through the university.
Yeah, sounds like a bunch of us were on the same page. So sorry, gosh, it was quiet for a second. So I was just gonna, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I can share the email with the dimensions real quick. Hold on. Just try and make sure because I also have the unstable note K. So supposedly turning off your video helps with that. So he said, we have 4 glass cases that lock, so your work will be safe. 2 glass cases size 81 across and 36 high, and 2 glass cases size 58 across and 45 high. So you could send as much work as you want, and we can figure out how to show, lost my place. Oh, show it and how much of it to show. He said, we show unframed work on paper. They don't have to all be print, but we are a printmaking program, so it would be nice, famous ellipses. It would be nice to have mostly printed work. We do bulldog clips, which or binder clips. I've never had an issue with leaving dents on paper. And I know because going there, I know Joe takes really good care of all of them. So I really doubt there would be a high risk of any damage for anybody's work.
It mostly depends on which paper, because Kitakata will hold on to that memory. But
yeah.
He also uses a piece of paper inside of the clip that's on the piece of the print, so that minimizes some damage too.
And then I'm not horrible at math. He said all this to me, and I was like, yeah, there's a lot of variations of prints that could go in these sizes. So that's why I don't really know how many people we could include. And I think that's why he's also not given us a number of how many, because it really just depends on the size of print people are giving us and how many people. So let me see if there's more. Okay, and then I think anytime in February or March would work. So I don't think he would be holding it for very long. It would be probably a month. Yeah, I try to keep the work up for at least a month. February 1 start date or March 1 start date. The work is up for roughly 30 days and then give me 2 weeks for return shipping. Do you think the artist will be sending me their work directly? And I haven't responded because I didn't know. So where is
So Olivia, I just did a little bit of math based on area real quick. And so
bless you.
If every print is 16 by 20, I think we could get somewhere between 45 prints total if every work is 16 by 20. I think, and that's if I did my math right too. I don't know if I did. It was really fast area.
Border information as well, a 3 to 5 inch border for each one.
That also, yeah, I mean, my numbers also don't include spacing in between prints as well. And that was going off of kind of a grid type.
I think what we could do, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
But I think one thing that we could do is have a range where we say we will be accepting 15 to 20 prints depending on size. Or really, we could probably do more. We could do 20 to 25 depending on size. But I do think it's important for us to tell them it depends on how big your stuff is. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, could we, from what y'all remember, Olivia and Stephanie, who went to WVU, what do they salon style hang? Is it just in a row? Can we feasibly put 3 rows stacked? Can it be salon style? How do we want it to look,
It's basically cases with sliding doors. So it's yeah. So when he would hang them, it just depended on how big the work was. I think he had full sheets at one point, and I think that they probably only had, they only could fit 2 to a case because of how big those prints were. But we often salon styled, and you can fit 3 rows depending on the size of everything. Yes.
Let's do that. Yeah.
KU had a similar thing. Like we had, I think, some really big ones. I can share my screen real quick to like show what that looked like. So it was like, I mean, these are more uniform dimensions, but and it sounds like WVU has a little bit more variety, but that was like what ours looked like.
Are the ones at WVU like, how do I word this? Like they're like deep? Are they just like oh my God, like homoso, or is it like a deep case? Like
it's homoso and it is not deep, like how Ruben showed us.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then let's just do it like Frogman style and just like salon it, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think if we try and like think about like lines and all that kind of stuff, it's going to get really difficult and logistical, which like it's fine if you have a whole gallery space, you know, because you can move things about. But like I remember there was a show when I was working in a gallery where there were too many pieces, and then we did have to do at least one kind of display wall that was salon style. So I think it's good to have like a flexibility with the way that we kind of display it. But I do think still having that range of like 20 to 25 might be a good idea. Yes.
I also may have missed this earlier. So if I did, I'm sorry, but who's like, is anyone going to be there to like install it? Like
Joe will install it.
But I mean, like one of us, like, will we, okay, yeah. So it's just going to be kind of like, we'll have to provide some instruction for what we want it to look like. Like, do we provide installation guides or just be like, Joe, best judgment, go for it.
Well, what about, does anyone know if there is like a current like undergrad or grad volunteer there currently that would be willing to, well, that's not the worst, you know, I really trust Joe, like whatever he wants to, you know,
I would too.
General guidelines from us, but I also really trust him, you know.
Yeah, I would too.
We can also ask him to send pictures of the cases. That wouldn't be much work at all if y'all want to see the pictures. I was trying to find, I know Liv found one where Todd's work was there, but I don't know. I can't find them. Where did you find that? On his website?
No, I took that picture. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I don't
Wait,
know.
that's not up.
But
Hold on.
this is like something that we do at the university that I work at, where like all the work that gets made by students is like a bunch of different sizes.
Yeah, that's basically what it could look like.
Right, like, and I think it looks really solid, and the stuff that is like 16 by 20, you know, a little bigger than a half sheet, that can, you know, have its own, like we can use them as like bookends in the case, or, you know, like another option that I like to do, and I will send this, I don't have this file, it's on my work computer, but I take photos of all the work, and like I have them like sized relatively, you know, if I know it's like a big piece or a small piece or a medium piece, and then I actually like lay out like what I want everything to look like, and then we just hang it like that. So we could do that as well, just to get a sense of like where we want placement and stuff like that as well. Also, I did not know that you could do this. That is so cool.
Wait, what?
Sorry
What's
about
happening?
the audio. I shared my phone screen.
That's amazing.
Oh, like via airdrop?
Yeah. Well, it's not airdrop. You just click. So when you click share screen, there's like desktop, a second option, and then it says iPad/iPhone. You click that, and then you go to screen share here, where it says Zoom, Stephanie's MacBook Air. You click that, and then you pick the Zoom meeting, and then it shares it. So these are the cases.
Mine is right
They're
now.
like angled pictures. So, yeah, but that's kind of what they look like. But these were full sheets. Okay, so they fit 3 full sheets in like some of the cases. Some of them are a little smaller, I think. Is that right? They're varied sizes, right? Yeah. So that's what they look like, basically.
That looks bigger than full. That's 22 by 30?
No, they're not quite a whole half sheet,
Oh,
but they're
okay.
big. I think
they're
they're
big.
like, yeah, they're big, but I don't think a whole half. I think it's like
I thought they were full sheets. I thought they were 22 by 30. You think they're bigger than that?
They look
I thought they were
bigger
small.
to me.
They could be bigger.
Oh,
I have no
I
idea.
thought it was smaller.
All right, let me
Yeah.
stop sharing.
But yeah, I think we've got a good like idea. So as far as I think it is a good idea to have 16 by 20. So maybe we go with 20 prints, period. Because you can always adjust the space between to make it look a little bit, you know, more filled out.
Mhm.
And I feel like 20 is a good way to kind of divide things up, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, for the jurying, so if our submission deadline is January 3rd, you two have until the 17th to like that's like 2 weeks. So realistically, you know, if you're looking at the submissions, you can, I'm totally happy to help with this, but just like sort of look and see how things will fit. If 20 is like the, you know, the number we want to stick with, and then potentially we could do some like some mock-ups to see if we can accept like another 5 or something if they're smaller, or you know, whatever, like we can do that as well, since we have a full 2 weeks to like actually look at the work, see what might fit, do all the math, and do all that stuff.
Okay, cool. I think that's a good idea. And then I think, what was the other thing that we were talking about? Oh, one question I have about this is it going to be 1 print per person if they get in?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it
Yes.
depends on how many people submit. Because if we only have like 10 people submit, then we could potentially take 2 from everybody. Yeah, I think it depends.
Okay, so we just won't say. I also kind of don't like saying 1 print per person because there are people who have a series that needs to go together, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
I also don't
You
like
won't
making
say anything.
promises. Yeah, I say we don't say like how many we're gonna pick and anything. I say like we'll just figure it out once we get everything.
Mhm.
And then if we don't get enough, then we can extend the deadline.
Yeah.
And have a second push for like 1 week.
Mhm. Okay. And then we kind of went on a little tangent when we were talking, Olivia. What other questions did you kind of have for everybody?
I mean, we kind of talked about everything.
Okay. One thing that I was wondering was, Joe did say February or March. Would it be better if we did March instead, so we have a little bit more time to drum up interest? Okay,
Yeah.
so that'll shift the whole timeline back a little bit, right?
Yes, please. Because February is like right when like my semester will be like just really getting started. March I'll be a little more stable personally.
Yeah, and I think maybe, what do y'all think about if Joe could keep the work up for like at least a month and a half? Because this is going to be a lot of work, and only having something up for a month is, I just want to make sure that it's like we have some time in between, especially if we want to like get this work to Brandon at UNCP. I just want to make sure we have like enough time to be able to do that. And I'd love to be able to tell people when they're getting their work back, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know if a month is all that Joe can swing, like no worries, but I would like to advocate for a month and a half if possible, just a month plus 2 weeks.
Okay. And then Kate, if you need any kind of help with like readjusting the timeline, that would be, I can hop in on that, no problem. Is there anything else about WVU's show?
Exhibition title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking back to the text just to make sure I'm not missing anything.
Oh, actually, I have one other thing. Is this international or national?
National. So
National
just for
Shipping,
now, it's our
yeah.
first one.
for shipping.
Shipping
Well,
for international could be so tricky.
yeah, maybe we could say the Americas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate to be exclusive, but
It's our first
know.
one. They have to have some patience with us, right? Like I would have
Please.
patience with this.
yeah, that's true. That's
And
very-
we're gonna I figure in the call and like whatever Instagram pushes we do, we can just mention like this is our inaugural exhibition. Like keep an eye out. We're planning on doing this regularly throughout the year. We're gonna expand to international eventually. We just need to like get our feet on the ground, you know?
Mhm. That's a good point. Transparency is everything.
Regarding title, could we just come up with that once we get, could we come up with like a statement and title after seeing all the work together? Like what if a theme like becomes present?
Mhm.
I'm thinking like the way that like the International Print Center calls work, you know, it's just like the new print series in the fall and summer are, it's just like a general open call, but then like once all the work comes in, then like the curator, the jurors come up with like a whole statement and title. That way we can give us a little bit of time. We're not like too fixed on anything. I don't know what y'all think about that.
Yeah, we could either do that or we could just give it a very vague, kind of amorphous title, or we could literally call it just a word,
Yeah.
like amorphous or something.
We are here.
Yeah, I don't want people to think that they need to make work, you know,
Yeah.
for this exhibition, because we just want to see what I'm, as a juror, not particularly looking for anything that you were like, I made this to suit exactly what you called for. I would greatly prefer to just see like, what is your natural state? What is your natural, oh, that's a funny pun, natural state. Sorry. But something like that, where it's just like, you know, let me know. I want to see what our membership works on and like what kind of work they do. And I don't want to give preference to somebody who's like, I make work about specific issues that are socio-political versus somebody who's like, I make work that's decorative.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think equally valid forms of working, you know?
Maybe it's Meet the Guild.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like, Becky, what you just described is a fantastic show, and it's a fantastic way to explain what we're doing. We just have to, I actually like Meet the Guild a lot also. I like the idea of having some sort of theme at the beginning, just so that, I don't know about y'all, but I kind of rely on shows that have themes so that I know whether or not I should apply. If my work has nothing to do with what a juror is looking for, like if they explicitly say we're looking for X, Y, and Z, then I know that I at least have a shot. And if I'm going to be paying like $40 or something, then I need to know I have a shot. I know that's not the situation that we're in, but I just wanted to put it out there. It could be really, really broad, but I love the idea of it just being like, we want to see what, you know, our membership is making, and just something related to that, and like a tiny little statement, and then we can finesse it as we go, but just something like catchy that they can, you know, 3 weeks down the line they can say, oh, I need to apply for that show, like that blank show, you know.
What if we called it in state? Is that a little bit too broad, a little too vague? Just so that it's not, there's no impetus of like, let me do something different from what I normally would do. Like I just want to freeze everybody and put them in little shadow boxes. That's a wild thing to say. Never mind. I promise I'm not a murderer, but you know, something like that. And maybe what we should do, because we all have each other's like phone numbers and things like that, maybe we give it a little bit more time to gestate in our brains too. But I think something along the lines of like meet the members, we're here, those kinds of just like blah blah, we are this, you know. And yeah, Olivia, that's right, in state kind of becomes a very like in the United States. Yeah. Wow. So something like that. So maybe let's give that a little bit of time. I think we need to put a deadline on it though, because it does need to start, you know, we need to start calling out for that pretty soon. So how about we do it, maybe the deadline is Tuesday for us to just like text each other ideas.
Yeah, that works. I think we were planning on putting like announcing it on Monday, so maybe we can just push the announcement to like Wednesday or something after we talk a little bit more about the title.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay.
It definitely doesn't have to be like amazing, like a, you know, we don't have to think too hard about it. It's just something to like sort of brand it, you know.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's probably it for WVU, right? We're approaching like the last 15 minutes of our 2-hour time. So we might need to do a little bit more or go over a little bit, but next is mailing. And I have to the mailing members here. So do you all have anything to talk about in specific? I think things are going well. We have more templates, but I didn't know if there was anything specific.
I don't have anything.
Okay, cool. I do want to say just mailing might get kind of crazy after the Pine Copper Lime interview comes out. So always feel free to ask for help. I hope that, you know, if volunteers are watching this, they also know they can always send us a message and say, and we will be there and have their back.
Is it coming out Tuesday?
I think so. It's coming out. We're coming out next. So
December 7th is Tuesday. Yep.
yeah. So be ready. And then
Really
actually,
excited to hear it.
call to come out on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I did ask Miranda to mention the show, and so hopefully she'll do that. I think she will. She got back to me and said she would, so I don't know why she wouldn't. But, you know, we might have that kind of information coming up. Sorry, I'm having a plane experience happen, so I'm sorry if you heard that. So if there's nothing for mailing, then let's move on to the incorporation. We talked a little bit already about the mission statement ratification vote. I think it's going well. We had more respondents in a shorter period of time than we did before, but we also have a longer voting period. I think my main thing to go with that is when we do ratification votes, are we just going to go with the majority rules? Or should we do like a 2/3 majority? Or I don't really know how we would know that other than with a percentage of like 75 people, you know, or 2/3 is at 600 or 66%, which is a weird one, 67 if you round it up.
I'm okay with majority because, and as long as we give future board members the ability to introduce like another edit if necessary. And I don't know what that could necessarily look like. That could be, that's the thing we'll have to spell out in the bylaws, but the type of thing where it's like, does it, and I was just thinking about this, you know, today, because I know like in the earlier drafts that I did, like I was getting maybe a little too ahead of myself and like really specific with some of the things when we haven't actually like done that yet. So like, for instance, when more stable actions happen, you know, as part of like what membership entails, things that we talked about earlier, then like the next board can take over and they can, you know, ask the membership, like, do you want, you know, another rewrite of the mission statement? You know, like, what does the membership want? You know, and that could be like the first order of business that that new board does, right?
Yeah, and we have talked before about having like a, I don't remember if everyone was present for this, but I know that the legal team has talked before at least about, which they don't exist anymore, but they've talked about the idea of like, well, we'll write into the bylaws a specific number of times that the bylaws need to be revisited within a year. Might be one time a year, just annually revising it, having a town hall where people can come in and be like, I take issue with this specific portion, or we should add something else about this thing that happened. Like maybe we don't say anything about deleting comments or disabling comments on Instagram, and we end up somehow, hopefully not, but we end up somehow in a situation where that would have been something we needed to write out. That would be something that could be added or revised at that point, you know? So I think you're right. I think we will have the idea, the not ease necessarily, because they will have to refile the articles of incorporation. Well, they'll have to file an amendment, but we will have the opportunity to revise. And I think that should be the priority of the board member. And yeah, I think, so Olivia says she likes the idea of every time a board member or every time a board changes out, they look at those bylaws with the membership. So I think that's a good idea.
And that was part of the last like members meeting at Mid-America Print Council. Like the last members meeting that we had was, here are the new bylaw edits. Are they approved? And you know, and it was a quick, and theirs was like a quick thing. They didn't even do it through. They were just like, everyone here, does anybody object? Nope. And then they just went through it. They're like, all right, here it is. It was like very quick. which I'd be curious to hear from Ani, because I feel like there was like, whether that method works since Ani is now on the board.
Yeah, and I think we could probably figure that into that next incorporation meeting where we're like, okay, here's what we have seen other, exhibitions. Here's what we've seen other organizations do. Does that seem like it works, or are we worried about membership not being able to attend? Because like if we end up international, time zones, like already
Exactly.
Just the time zones for us are wild. So do we wait a week? Do we say like, okay, do we do like the not impersonal, but the remote Google form? Is that the best way for us to just be like, hey, it's this time of year. Do we need to change the bylaws? If so, what portion? I think that might be something to discuss. And of course, we'll send that out to the membership to vote on once we get there. So, okay, cool. So does anybody have an objection to the majority ruling in this case? Okay. So we'll do the majority being, let's say 51% at least in favor. Okay. All right, and then the next thing, we don't really have anything else to talk about with the mission statement so far. It's still, an active vote. I reminded people, I think today or yesterday, to do the vote, and I think I'll also need to send out, well, I don't necessarily have to be the one who does this, but someone could send out a reminder email as well, like, hey, vote. I like the 2-week timeline because it gives more than one opportunity for a reminder. So I could send a reminder through the Instagram once, and then through like halfway through that 2-week period when there's 1 week left. And then again, like, the day before the votes are in, and I think the more reminders, the better.
I agree. So would that next email need to be sent out this coming week? Because
Yes, it actually probably should have already been sent out. I just hadn't gotten to it yesterday.
Okay.
So.
I can send a reminder. Would a reminder be good for tomorrow?
Yes,
Just to send that email tomorrow? Okay.
And it might be one of the first things people see on Monday too. So that's
okay.
Great.
All right.
Okay. The next big thing, which we might actually kick down to our next interim board meeting, is sectioning out all the bylaws. That's going to take a minute. And I think I would, in the interest of the people who have shown up to maybe ask us questions, I think maybe we should postpone that for our next interim meeting, which will probably be in 2 weeks. Is that okay with everybody? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let me make a note of that. And then our next step, so I've already made steps to kind of schedule the next incorporation team meeting so that we can draft the bylaws for the board of directors and see how much we can get away with. I think right now, my personal preference is I'm going to try and figure out if we can change the name of the board. I don't know if we can, but that'll also come with like legal counsel later. But I do kind of think that the board should kind of operate more like what our regional representatives were going to be. So that'll be something that comes up at that next incorporation meeting. When we do have the incorporation meeting, I don't necessarily have to be the one that's there. Now that we have a full interim board, it can just be one member. It could be all of us, whoever can make it. I think it's a good idea for as many of us to be there as possible, especially since the bylaws affect everybody. But yeah, I'll let you all know when that meeting is settled on too. Okay. Cool. The next little thing, it's not little, but the next topic is design. So right now I have been kind of speaking with Tuan a lot, and Tuan has agreed to work on an infographic for voting results to put on Instagram. Until that's produced, I think we should still be announcing them. But she'll be working on that, as well as the prospectus call template and a footer for emails. So I've offered to give her my help in anything that she needs. But yeah, just so everybody knows where that progress is going. She currently has the prospectus call template that I've used before for the Instagram takeover, and she'll be kind of just revising that over time. Next is YouTube. So there are a couple of issues with the YouTube team feeling kind of like alienated, and I kind of am understanding where that's coming from, because YouTube basically it's solitary activity of just kind of revising the transcript that Zoom produces. So I was thinking about different ways we could address that. And I'd also love to hear y'all's thoughts on this. But one thing I was thinking was instead of having an Instagram team, we have a social media team. And so they are part of those kinds of meetings too. I think it also will cut down on the number of different Discord channels we have and things like that, which I honestly think would be good if we whittled things down a little bit more, made them more trim, slim, and also had more people involved in each kind of decision. But I don't know what everybody else thinks about that. Does anybody have any thought?
I support the transition to a social media team. I was thinking about it earlier, but I don't know what everyone else's thoughts are, and I'm not on either team.
I support it, but I'm also like what Instagram does and what YouTube does is really different. And I just want to make sure that, you know, all the tasks don't fall on 2 people or just 1 person, you know? And so I'm anticipating something like that. Like I like the idea of it being merged for like community reasons and also to like divvy up the labor however it needs to be. But I just want to ensure that, you know, people know like what they're like the ways they can help, like their role, whatever they're comfortable doing, that they're still able to do those things.
I definitely see what you're saying with that. I think maybe what I'll do is I'll reach out to the YouTube team and ask their thoughts too, because we don't have anybody from the YouTube team present. And just kind of talk with them a little bit more directly about like, here's a solution that we came up with. How do you feel about that? Do you have a different idea, or would you like to be switched to a different team also and have maybe for a little while the interim board members are doing a little bit of the CC double checking or something like that, you know, just kind of check in with them and see what they'd like to do. Because I also think it should definitely be a decision that's not us, like it's not a top-down decision. It's more of a, you know, let's talk about this. But I see what you're saying about the possibility of it kind of falling on a couple of people. And that actually brings me to, I'm going to skip website for a second. And then we have had some issues with that problem lately with volunteer engagement. There are a handful of people who aren't active, who are just on the general volunteer list. And then we've also had some issues with people who have said that they're going to be volunteers, but haven't necessarily been putting in, not an equal amount of time. I don't think that's a fair way to describe it, but haven't necessarily been putting in the time expected or needed. And some of that might be the end of the semester, but there are also people who've been consistent in this kind of direction for the past couple of meetings. What should we do with that information? Should we contact them directly, ask them if they still want to be a member? What do y'all think?
I have 2 options. One is just email, since we have a volunteer team's like label under contacts. Do we just email everybody and be like, hi, you're receiving this email because you signed up for the volunteer teams? Back in, you know, whenever we did, what was that? Did we create that in July? Or when was that made? When was that? I mean, regardless, being like, you know, we got your information at this time. and we are checking in to see where your interest still is. And maybe that's a survey. That's that's the email version. Version 2, option 2 is another town hall centered around the volunteer team, where it's like, hey, we're reaching out to all the volunteers that were established, and that could be established in an email. The conversation can be communal on Zoom, and it includes those people. And if you're there, you're there. And then if you're not there, you just maybe are off the volunteer team. Because I'm looking at the list right now, and there's a few people that I feel like I have interacted with, but there's a few that I also haven't. And then there's some that I also know and like could just be like really busy. Like I'm looking at like Sean, and I remember Sean from the initial meetings was there. And I know that they were like really gung-ho about volunteering. And I know Sean personally, but I also know that like Sean is at Arkansas, Sean and Brianne, both at Arkansas, are like both super busy with their own projects. And I feel like it just got away from them. And so maybe like a reminder. Maybe
Well,
they just don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, maybe giving people an opt-out too, because when we first accepted volunteers, it was a much more, we don't know what you're gonna do, but like here, do you wanna help? And so we got a lot of very general volunteer support, a lot of people who were like, I would love to help, just let me know. And I think maybe giving them that kind of, okay, like these are the ways that we need help right now, is to have this kind of organized, consistent interaction. Are you able to do that and commit to that? Or would you like to be, taken into more of a de-escalated position as a regular member who we could occasionally call upon, because there's nothing wrong with being busy. I'm not interested in trying to make people feel bad for being busy, but also there are, I'm sure we've all found ourselves in situations where we've said yes to something that was kind of amorphous, and then as it got more and more specific, different things happened in our lives that made it more difficult for us to participate, especially this year. So I think maybe the better way to do it is through email, just because again, the time zones. They make things really wild for everybody. And also it can be a little bit less, it might feel a little bit less personal in that way. I'm not sure. Go ahead, Kay.
Yeah, I think y'all are bringing up some really good points. And I'm wondering if we can identify the areas that we specifically need help with, and then, write the really general email and say like, hey, here's where we need help. Does anybody want to volunteer some time? Because like if I can imagine that the YouTube team, just as an example, it's like if every month they're captioning, up to like 4 videos or something, if that team was a little bigger and, something like YouTube team captioning is like not, it's not like a really intense time commitment, and it's something that I think a lot of people would feel comfortable doing. We could have those folks like rotating out, like, okay, you and you are responsible for, 1 video this month, and they can divvy it up that way. But I think like it's really important for us to like figure out what the areas are that we need help, and have that really specifically laid out, and then gauge interest and gauge who is able to do those things, and then say, hey, can you do that thing this month? Just speaking from personal experience, I remember when we first started everything, I can't remember exactly how it went, but I definitely remember like reaching out, and because I know like several of y'all personally, I talk with y'all like almost every week, that helped a lot. But for people who maybe don't really know us very well and don't know that they can feel like comfortable like Instagram messaging or like emailing or whatever, if they don't have like a specific task, they might not think that we even need them,
Yeah, that's very true. And that could also be part of that disenfranchisement, especially with YouTube. And I think another thing that maybe we should be more clear about is that people can be in more than one team, and that team membership doesn't have to be permanent. Like it can be like, would you like to try doing YouTube for a little while? And then just let us know if that's not working for you and you'd rather do something more hands-on, more involved. Like maybe you would rather do Instagram, because that's a pretty much everyday kind of a thing. There's a lot more communication going on with that. Whereas like YouTube has pretty much a standing permanent you know, duty, and we don't do much else with YouTube, you know. So I think maybe, oh, and Olivia said maybe we need to be better about reaching out. Yeah, I think that's true. And I think we should, Kay's very right, we should be more specific about those areas. So yes, and exactly, we don't have specific things. We don't have a list of specific tasks. And I think more recently, I actually did respond to one person where I was like, well, here are the teams that we have, and this is what they do. Would you want to be part of that? And I think maybe making that kind of part of the reply of like, these are the things we're doing. These are the activities that each team is working on, and things are getting whittled more. It's just like the Instagram takeovers, like we were clunky at the beginning, and it's getting more and more finessed and more streamlined. And so we're, you know, sort of reshuffling teams, but they're also working a little bit more efficiently. And we have more of a concept of what we need, you know, from our volunteers. So I think that is a good idea, to send out that email and say like, okay, here are specific things that we need help with. And part of that too is just like scheduling is difficult right now because everybody's got a different semester. I finished a week ago and I've been done. So this week there's been a lot more communication for me, but I know, I don't remember if it's Liv or there's at least one of us that like their semester is going like a month later and it's going to end like right on top of Christmas almost. So that's going to be kind of wild. And I think, so Olivia said that maybe we should ask what they'd like to do. I think we very specifically should give them a list of things to do and say, of this list, what would you be able to help us with? Because I have like had conversations with people where I'm like, you know, here are things that we could do. What are you interested in? And I don't get a response. And I think that's partly like, I don't know, because like, for instance, for me, I've never used an Instagram. I've never been in charge of an Instagram before. And I'm sure it showed at the beginning because I was like, I don't know what to put here. But things have gotten better the more I've worked with other people who have had that experience. Like Tuan has been really, really helpful for me. Kay has been really helpful for me. So that kind of, yes, Kay.
Olivia, did you?
Oh,
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just an idea popped in my head while we were talking, and if someone, like an idea for someone who wants specific things to do, areas that we know we need help in, like specifically are like finding content to promote on Instagram. So rather than like, you know, the board taking all of that on, or the Instagram team taking all of that on, we can also say like, here's what we want you to do. We want you to find, you know, X, Y, and Z on Instagram, and please send it to us and we will like promote it. You know, like that's a specific thing. It's easy and they can just have it in the back of their heads, you know.
Maybe what we should do then is, so I actually have to go relatively soon. But I do think what we should do is go ahead and create a master document and start listing things out. And then, you know, maybe through phone, maybe through the Discord, however we want to do it, through Google comments, whatever, just kind of communicate over the next like week or so about what, you know, we think are top priorities, different wording, things like that. But yeah, Olivia, what was your question? I also think, so as far as, sorry, I'm asking you a question and then immediately interrupting you, but as far as asking people what their strengths are, I do think it's a good idea to let people try something new as well and not just focus so much on their strengths, because I think a lot of people have not volunteered for things because they're concerned that they wouldn't be helpful. Because that's something that I have done in the past where I'm like, well, I don't really know anything about website management, so I don't want to like cause problems for everybody. And I don't know how many people are going to be involved, so I don't know if it's just going to be me doing the whole website. I don't feel comfortable with that. So I think instead just saying like, here are specific things, what would you be willing to help with? And then also maybe tacking on to that, do you want to officially join a team? because they don't necessarily have to join a team in order to be a volunteer, you know. So, but yes, this time for sure, Olivia.
No, we just kind of covered it. It's fine.
My bad. So yeah, let's start working on that master document. And the last thing is we should kind of just revisit the website timeline. I just wanted to check in with you all and see, like, we were initially going to be trying to get the website up starting January. Do we still think that's a doable thing, or should we do it a little bit more, kind of push it back a little bit more?
I was also going to say later, but also like thinking about like when we can get, when we're actually like able to get like some funding to pay for the yearly domain name. And if like I know on Cargo Collective, it's also like $99 a year to get access to their like storage stuff. The only reason I know is I like just did like a whole lecture with my pro practice class on like website building. I don't know if like others like they're, but yeah, like getting like some kind of funding to just pay for that so that we don't do that.
Okay, all right, so we'll postpone that a little bit more until we've got more official means of accepting money, etc. Okay, so that's all I had to bring to the meeting. Does anybody have anything else other than, you know, we'll be kind of recapping the next steps before we open up to the public, but yeah, does anybody have anything else? Okay, cool. So to recap, I know we're going to be working on a couple of different things. So Kay, Olivia, and I will probably continue, we will continue working on the WVU exhibit. Tuan is putting together a visual, which is great. And then we've settled on a bunch of information for that WVU exhibit, so we'll have to revise that Google Doc. We'll be sending out an email to remind people to vote. Ruben will be doing that tomorrow. And then we'll also start drafting that master document that says, you know, all of the little detailed things that we could be using more, or we could have more help with from volunteers. And then as far as the Instagram takeovers go, we're going to reach out to the people who have already contacted us. I don't mind being the person to do that. And saying, hey, would you like to take over January? And then we'll do the 1st and the 3rd, correct? Weeks, to be specific. Okay. And then the incorporation meeting, we'll kind of start talking about what we need to vote on for board member bylaws. We need to kind of define what an active member is. And then Ruben will take over, what was it? You used a really good word and I've already forgotten it.
Regarding what?
Regarding the addressing like meter members, having people directly.
Oh, intervening, having a more interventionist strategy. Yeah.
Yes. So Ruben will take over that. Of course, we can all be part of it. So feel free to send us a message at any point, Ruben. Kay is going to be revising the takeover how-to. And then Olivia will be revising the Instagram document, right? And then,
Also,
say that again, I'm sorry.
I said yes with Steph also. Stephanie.
Yes, okay, so Stephanie will also be helping with that. A lot of this is notes about takeovers, I'm sorry. I will also go ahead, so what I'm going to do is I'll do the summary email this time, since Ruben will be doing other emails. And I'm gonna send out 2 summaries. One will be for general public where it's, you know, the highlights and next steps. And then I'll send one to everyone specifically that's detailing every month that we were planning on doing like a full month takeover. And any other like minutia that is more relevant to us than to the general public. And I think, is that everything? Did I capture everything? Oh, and Stephanie and Barb will be turning in their Meet Our Members, so we'll be able to promote those as well. Is that all? Okay, cool. So does this time work for everybody next, not next Saturday, but the Saturday after that? Let me look at that date, because I have a tendency to just think in sequence and not dates. So on the 19th, would we be able to have our next meeting? Still at 2 p.m. EST?
That works for me.
Okay, cool. Does that work for you, Olivia?
I think so, but I'll be back on the East Coast, so I'm not entirely sure. To my knowledge, I don't have anything going on that day. So.
Okay, so we'll pencil that in then. We'll say 2 p.m. EST on December 19th. And we will revisit the sectioning out of bylaws at that point, because Incorporation already has plenty to do with the board member bylaws. But I do think it's important for us to go through and really create concrete sections. But yeah, I think that's about it. Are we all ready to open to the public? Okay, so are there any questions or concerns from anybody in attendance? Or suggestions, or even just comments? All right. And you can feel free to put those in the chat as well.
Well, they also might not be there because they logged in a while ago. So I don't know if they're.
And we went back past time by a bit. So I think, I don't know. I have
just
to
say and ask them directly. Like maybe if they hear their name, they might have something to say.
Yeah, Madison, do you have any questions for us?
Or things close to us, or
Or have we bored you to death?
Welcome, Madison. Glad that you're here.
Hi, it's okay. Did you have any kind of anythings? That's fantastic. We would love to have you help. Absolutely. Do you have a specific interest in any of the individual groups, or are you more interested in just having that, kind of taking a look at the email that we send out with those more specific tasks? Okay. Yeah, I think it's a good idea for us to get really specific with a lot of the things, because things have been very transient, to say the least, transitive, and very, very amorphous. So I think it's a good idea for us to kind of lay things out more specifically. Oh, that's really cool. Absolutely. Thank you to you for showing up. I know I kind of promoted it late, but that's something I've been really worried about, and I might actually kind of head back into meeting mode, but feel free to weigh in on this too, Madison. But I'm concerned a little bit about like how we promote public meetings. We haven't had any Zoom bombers so far, but there's a part of me that's like, oh, you know, and I think it's the like 89-year-old woman inside of me. It's just like, yeah. But I was wondering, should we continue to, you know, publicly promote our meetings through Instagram and the email, or just through email? Or should we kind of revisit that once we have a really good conception of what membership looks like? case that's to revisit it.
I also agree with revisit. My gut, though, right now is telling me email for security reasons.
Yeah.
But I would be more than happy to revisit because I'm worried about that. You know, like what was the difference between the excitement like at the very first like big town hall public meeting and then like, you know, where like can we feasibly get like an audience that big, you know, again.
Yeah.
I would be really excited to get that again.
Yes, I think so too. And I think we're also growing our audience a lot because the Instagram is starting to pull more people in. And it would be a shame if we didn't use that tool to reach people. But at the same time, there's that kind of feeling of like, you know. But I do think like summaries of meetings and things like that will continue to be exclusively email list. And I've been trying to rephrase the email promotions for like joining the emailing list to say like, do you want summaries of our meetings and, you know, things like that? Like here are the benefits that emailing list will get you.
That could be a whole Instagram post specifically, I think.
I also have been wondering if I should be doing those promotions on the story or if I should be doing them on the feed. So
both.
Okay.
I think it should be both.
Because I know there are some people who don't look at stories at all, and I'm one of those people that I've like emotionally given up on the algorithm, and so I just look at stories because I'm like, I know my friends are all listed here. I know everyone I know is here, so let me just boo, boo, boo. Yeah. But then some people have the opposite, where they're like, I don't have time to look at all these stories, and also I'm like one of the worst story people because I do obnoxiously loud music at random. So my apologies. But you know.
Well, and I do think that also may speak to like a responsibility on all of our part if we're going to be board members, like interim even, like we do have a response, like we should just automatically be resharing it as well to just keep expanding that message even further.
Absolutely.
Because I know there are people who are like watching my stories that, you know, maybe not watch because I may come up in their algorithm and it's just what you brought up. You know, I may come up in the algorithm, but the RIPG like account doesn't. Like it does for me because I engage with it a lot, but who knows, you know? I don't, yeah, and that's also something that's a metric to maybe look at, like how many people are viewing our stories.
Yes. Well, and we had like a really high spike in them, and then we had a little bit of a decline, and then they came back up. So I think it's also got to do with finals week, but also all kinds of other things like holidays, because it's really interesting. But for a lot of like the Thanksgiving holiday, people were really paying attention, probably because they were like, if they were with family, they were like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom for 45 minutes now. You know, but you know, if they weren't, it could have also been that they were like looking and seeing what families were doing and things like that, because this has been a really weird Thanksgiving for a lot of people. Yeah. For everybody really. So maybe that kind of heightened the engagement. So I think the longer we have this business Instagram, the more it's going to be helpful to kind of see that metric happening. But yeah. So if everybody is happy with this meeting and doesn't have anything else, we can revisit all kinds of different things next meeting. Okay. All right, cool. So I will see you all in 2 Saturdays. Feel free to let me know if like something's going on in your personal life and you end up, feel free to let any of us know, the whole group. If something happens and you're like, oh, I can't make this deadline or I can't do the specific thing, just let us know. One of us is probably going to be checking messages and going, oh, I'll do it, you know. So, and don't ever feel bad for living your own life. Okay. Okay, cool. All right. Well, I'll miss you. Bye.
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 Bye, Madison.